Well, thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday morning as part of the Staples Business Advantage 2020 Business Expo. My name is Matt Freeman. Today, we'll be talking about your new Plan A, which is really around solutions to meet your new workplace demands. So joining me today, we've got Travis Letwin. Travis manages our Canadian wiper and safety team, and Fiona does the same for our health and wellness side of the fence. So really think anything related to towel and tissue. So now that we've got your attention, why don't we help you understand a little bit about what we want to cover. So first and foremost, during COVID, a lot of behaviors have changed. And with that, so have a lot of what people think around office buildings, around schools, and around healthcare settings. So what we want to do is help you understand where they're comfortable, where they're not, and more importantly, some of the things that we can do to help get them more comfortable. And that's where we'll talk about key hotspot solutions to consider. And then at the end, we're happy to address any Q&A that you've got. So first and foremost, let's talk a little bit about research. So what we're going to walk you through over the next few slides was research that's been recently done. It's a large sample size that includes folks from both Canada and the US. Really from a broad representation of what we call away from home environments, really just a fancy way to say office buildings, schools, healthcare, theaters, airports, things of that nature. And really what we wanted to do is two things. What are people thinking about when they're away from home? And more importantly, what are some of the things that they're expecting to see to help make them a little bit more comfortable when they're there? So, if you take one thing away from this slide, really it's look how much stuff is showing up in orange. So really what you're looking at when you look at those orange sections are people who perceive a high risk when they're outside of the home. So I don't think it's a surprise that people feel more at risk when they're outside of the home. I think what really struck me though was the amount of people that feel it as either a high risk or a moderate risk. Another cool thing that you may want to look at that's kind of aside from this is if you were to Google tracking of cell phones during COVID, it shows you some things that kind of correlate very much to this, and it tells you how fewer people are going to work, how fewer people are actually going to schools, airports, and things of that nature. So there really is a strong correlation between the risk people feel and where they're actually going to. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some segments that we think are of the greatest importance to this group, and that's education. And when we say education, we're really talking about K to 12. We're going to talk a little bit about healthcare, and we're also going to talk about office buildings. So when we look at the most important signals from those three segments, whether it's students, visitors, patients, or staff, some of the things that they're wanting to see to feel confident are some of the things that you'd expect. So the first one, really no big surprise. Hand washing, hand sanitizer, cleaning, and disinfecting. The second one, though, is a big, I'd say a big shift, and that's seeing employees actively clean. And that can include staff using disinfecting wipes on surfaces. Certainly from an office building setting, what we had seen prior to COVID was a really big trend to night cleaning. And one of the reasons for that is people felt that cleaners during the day were disruptive, whether it was noise, whether it was extra congestion in the building, whatever it may be. That has certainly shifted to where now people, in order to feel safe, want to see that cleaning happening. So that's been a big change. The next one is that seeing that the restroom is clean and that it looks clean. And one of the biggest things that we took away was things like water on the countertop was a big concern. It kind of really grossed people out, quite honestly. The second thing was making sure that the washrooms were well stocked with products. So things like making sure there was enough bath tissue, making sure there were enough hand towels in the towel dispensers. Fourth is really that trash or other waste being disposed of properly. So before, where people may have been okay with waste bins being full for an extended period of time, not so much anymore, right? There's that perception that that trash has got to be emptied more often to give that perception, and quite frankly, reality that it is clean. And then finally, the last part, really this is specific to healthcare, and I don't think it's so much as a surprise, but it's the staff and the guests who are wearing that appropriate PPE, including masks. And I think where the big shift there, quite frankly, is the visitor part. Whereas prior to COVID, you may not have seen that. It certainly is an expectation now when it comes to healthcare. So how do those signals really translate into the amenities that people are looking for when they go into a facility? First, anti-bac soap, really not a huge surprise there. We've got data that suggests actually that soap is up by 2.6 times where it used to be prior to COVID. Just means when people are going to the washroom, they're making sure that they are in fact washing their hands. With that, touchless restroom dispensers. That was always popular, but we've seen 2x, 3x demand on touchless towel systems really over the last few months, and that's sometimes been a challenge for supply chain to keep up with, but we're there. Third, again, hand sanitizer. No real big surprise that it's there. The next one though is a little bit. So that's paper disposable toilet seat covers. That came out loud and clear when it came specifically to offices and healthcare. And I think what we read to that is, people can't always control the environment that they're in. And having something like a toilet seat cover is a very easy way for them to gain control of an environment that they might not otherwise have control of. Next is ventilation systems, specifically filters, making sure the filters on those ventilation systems are working properly. That came through loud and clear when it came to healthcare settings. And then finally, again, this one was a little bit of a surprise, which is a shelf in the restroom stall for personal items, whether that's a purse, whether that's a phone, or something else. And I think what we've learned is in office settings today, whether it was pre-COVID or post-COVID, there's just not a lot of personal space. And this is a really stressful time. And as a result of that, people tend to go to the washroom, believe it or not, to escape. If they need a moment to themselves, that's typically where they go. So anything that you can do to enhance or make them feel more comfortable when they're in the washroom is something that is certainly appreciated, especially in an office setting. And having something as simple as a shelf in that washroom stall can help do that. So when you boil it all down, when you look at all of those segments that we looked at, there's really four key things that stick out. First and foremost is people are certainly washing their hands and sanitizing their hands more often than they used to. The underlying need there is just to make sure you've got those high capacity systems in the right place. And when you can't find those high capacity systems like hand sanitizer, we'll give you some tips and tricks on what you may want to consider as an alternative. Second is seeing is believing. And that's people want to see people actively cleaning in your facility. I think a lot of people might agree that prior to COVID, people cleaned to make people think it looked clean. Now people are actually cleaning for a purpose, and that's to clean any type of soil load that might be on a surface, and people actively want to see that being done. Finally, when it comes to things like paper towels, it's that touchless system that's important. So 9 out of 10 people really want to see that. They want to go into the washroom and they really don't want to touch anything that they don't want to touch. I think that's why you're seeing in a lot of buildings now, they'll actually remove the washroom door and make it more of a game to get into the washroom with more left and right hand turns, but they remove that door so quite frankly people don't have to touch stuff. And with that, people just don't want to touch those dispensers. Then lastly, the condition of the restroom really does impact what people think of that facility. I think in a lot of people's minds, they think of the washroom and they say, hey, if I can see what this washroom looks like and it's clean, it gives them the sense that other things that maybe they can't see, like filtration systems, like ventilation systems, are also the way that they should be. Conversely, if the washroom is messy and it's something they can see, where are some of the other cracks in the building that maybe aren't so evident? So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of insight into what people are looking for when they go outside of their home to feel a little bit protected. With that, Fiona, why don't you tackle a little bit around workplace hotspots?
Thank you, Matt. I would say the world has changed, and with the new hygiene expectation, we need to evolve to include a more comprehensive and thorough approach to hygiene so that we all feel more safe, more hygienic, and also feel cared for at work. So, amongst the many actions that we can take, the two important steps that are more critical than ever is cleaning your hands and also disinfecting surfaces. Let's talk a little bit about the science of hygienic hand washing and the importance of hand drying. As we said, 94% of the people we interview say that they are actually washing and sanitizing their hands more than they used to before the COVID-19 pandemic. Are we cleaning our hands appropriately and effectively? The truth is, 95% of adults don't wash their hands long enough to remove bacteria and germs. These bacteria and germs can actually remain on our hands after washing. As we are not perfect in washing our hands, the paper towels will enable us to remove the bacteria that remains on our hands after washing. Therefore, proper hand drying is just as important as proper hand washing. So, how do you dry your hands? There are actually different reasons we make our choice of using paper towels or jet air dryer for hand drying. We would like to encourage you to think about the fact that they are actually not equivalent from a hygiene perspective. Here are some information and statistics that we're gonna share with you to explain why they are not hygienically equivalent. As you can see, if you are not using a paper towels, you actually you will have your hands get further contaminated actually by a jet air dryer. So as a recent study found, the inner surface of a jet air dryer can harbor 45 times more bacteria than found on a toilet seat. Yes, a toilet seat. Amazingly, a toilet seat is something actually the cleanest things in the restroom. It is actually cleaned more often. Similarly, people have 42% more bacteria on their fingers after using a jet air dryer. We talked before that people do not wash their hands properly. So when a jet air dryer is involved, you can see the combination of not washing your hands properly with the introduction of air into drying hands could result in something like this. As we all know that people don't do a great job washing their hands, looking at what left on their hands, the residual bacteria left on people's hands after hand washing, it is all about what is left on your hands. So don't be the victim of our own poor hand washing. So when you are thinking about should I use a paper towel or use a jet air dryer moving forward, you have to at least make the decision fully knowing that they are not hygienically equivalent. This drive home why paper towels are so important. Not only paper towel is a personal drying experience, which is actually more hygienic than a communal drying. Using paper towel is going to help actually further remove the residual bacteria that contribute further to the total objective of hand cleaning. So when it comes to hand hygiene, paper towel can actually remove up to 77% of the bacteria that remains on our hands after washing. Paper towels actually reinforce good hygienic washing and drying habits. This is the reason why when faced with a choice of drying methods, 90% of people show a preference for paper towels over jet air dryer in the restroom. Also, the World Health Organization recommends single-use paper towels in its patient safety instruction for healthcare workers. To complement that, as we said, nearly 9 in 10 people surveyed say touchless systems are very important restroom amenities. So looking into touchless solution like Scapro electronic system, it is touch-free, delivering 641 hand dries, and it is one of the longest towels on the market. I would say also most importantly, it is a very reliable system because the battery lasts for 150,000 of dispensers. That is equivalent to around 5 years of battery life. So I would say I would like to conclude this part with a very simple statement that having touchless power, having touchless paper towel drying option is one of the most impactful way to improve and promote workplace hygiene in the new era. So Matt and Travis are going to cover how hygienic tissue and also wiping cleaning solution has evolved as a tool for you. So thank you, Matt. Over to you.
Thank you, Fiona. So just to kind of go back to where we were. So we got an understanding of people are nervous when it comes to traveling outside of their home. We know some of the things that they're expecting, regardless of the type of environment that they're going to. And things like hand sanitizer were in the top five, regardless of the segment that we're talking about. I think one of the challenges, though, with hand sanitizer is high capacity systems. So the stuff that goes into a dispenser, it's certainly more hard to come by now than it ever has been. And then the second part of that is, you can go to a lot of different retail stores and see lots of hand sanitizer on the shelves, but the reality is there's been a lot of recalls as well. So I think if you were to Google Health Canada hand sanitizer recalls, there's been 103 recalls reported just since June 17th, and that's pretty significant. So at a time where reliability is sometimes in question rather, and at a time when it's sometimes hard to get those high capacity systems, what can you do? So this is one of the things that we think is a good idea. So we know that people are apprehensive about touching things that we would call hotspots or high touch areas. This is a product that we've actually pivoted during COVID, and I hate to use the word pivot, but I will. This was traditionally a bath tissue, right? So it's that one at a time dispensing type of bath tissue, very similar in size to a Kleenex. But the dispensers look great. They're available in black, white, or faux stainless, and can easily be placed in any of those hotspot areas where you traditionally would have hand sanitizer, but may have an issue getting it right now. And ultimately, it just helps create that barrier against germs for people to help them feel a little bit more comfortable. So, not exactly hand sanitizer, but we think a really effective solution, regardless of the type of work environment that you're in. Travis, we talked a little bit about wiping, more importantly, seeing people clean. Do you want to talk a little bit about the importance of what people are cleaning with?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I think, you can see Matt and Fiona both did an excellent job describing kind of that first part of the new normal that we're seeing is that hand drying and the importance of hand cleaning. The second part of that is actually the wiping and the cleaning and the surface contamination. So just a couple quick stats, 7,200. So 7,200 is the amount of surfaces the average person touches every 24 hours. So if you had a facility with potentially 100 people in it, that's 720,000 surfaces that are being touched every single day. And that's just with around 100 people. Next to that is a desk. So a lot of us are virtual, a lot of us are at home or working in communal spaces, whatever that may be. The average desk has about 400 times more bacteria than a toilet seat. I know we've referenced that before, but it's one of those things that resonates a lot with people, and that we can actively say that desk in front of you where you're spending a lot of your day is 400 times more likely to harbor bacteria than your toilet seat. And then your mobile phone, we're all using it every day. It's in our hands, it's near us, it's pressed against our faces, whatever it may be. The average mobile phone can harbor about 6,300 bacteria just on that one surface. So that's the danger. The next question we have is how are we cleaning that? What are we using as far as a product to get that surface sanitized? So a lot of people are using reusables. And when we look at reusables, we've seen that about 93% of them contain viable microorganisms after laundering. So that means when you get that shipment back, when you're holding that cloth, that bar rag, that microfiber, whatever it may be, if it has been cleaned, the likelihood is that there's still something living on it that we are using. We partner exceptionally well with BOMA, and they've actually come out with some direction on how to get back to work and are very upfront in saying that they do not recommend the use of reusables, and they're very pro disposable cleaning supplies. The next part of it is when you look at a cleaning cloth, looking at the actual efficacy of how it's being used. It's likely paired with some kind of disinfectant, and the way the binders work and the cotton in that rag or that microfiber, it actually holds on to that disinfectant and doesn't release it onto the surface, which can diminish the efficacy by about 85%. So not only are they probably not clean, but they're holding on to that chemical that's trying to get that surface clean in the first place.
Travis, one of the points just on that 85% with cotton, and I think one of the things that we've traditionally seen a lot of the times in hotels, long-term care homes, is there's almost a life cycle for things like face cloths, where the face cloth that's been used with residents or with guests typically kind of ends up in the cleaner's hands at the end. And I think that's a critical thing here is you got to make sure you've got the right tools at the right time, and a face cloth for something like that probably just isn't the right spot.
Absolutely. And I think we touched on it before that, people want to feel that confidence. They want to see what facilities are using in healthcare and education. They want to be able to visually see and feel comfortable in that environment, whether you're sending their kids to school or they're visiting somebody in a hospital or whatever that may be. And a lot of these things are becoming more known. And so seeing that disposable is enough to trigger to say, I feel more comfortable knowing that this facility is likely more clean than if they were using some kind of reusable product. So surface cleaning and disinfecting protocols, it's really important to understand that when we are cleaning and disinfecting, there's a lot of things that are visible and there's a lot of things that are invisible. So that in that two-step process, what we're trying to do is first clean and get rid of all that stuff that's visible. So that detergent, using a detergent and soap is get rid of that dirt and grime and grease and everything on that surface. And step two is really designed around getting rid of that invisible, those viruses, that contamination, that surface contamination. And in order to do that, that is the ultimate goal. We need to make sure it's clean. So each of these steps requires some type of cleaner, some type of wiper, a disposable cloth to help do that. So just important to know the differences, and before you disinfect, you have to clean. And then we've also included a link here from Health Canada just on the approved disinfectants for COVID and just some direction around that. So what are your options? There's lots of options. It's almost overwhelming for decision makers on, what do I use? Is it going to work? And am I using the right tool? So first off, pre-saturated wipes. It's the thing that everybody's been reaching for first, but it's also been the hardest to get. It's almost impossible to find it right now. And so then people are looking to the mix your own. So, our wet task system is very popular. It's combining dry cloths into a bucket where you mix your own disinfectant or cleaner to make your own preset. The fact is that, in such high demand, it's been sparse as well. And, we're trying to keep up and ramp up inventory, but it's also sometimes challenging to get. The next two options are ones that we really want to focus on and really showcase the value and, how they're strong solutions in the alternatives for those first two. One being a full saturation, which is an open bucket. You put some disposable cloths in there, you fill it with your disinfectant, and then off you go. And the second one being spray and wipe. Both of these last two are readily available and again, both strong options. So the first being that pre-saturated, that make your own. So what we're trying to really showcase here is that Kimberly-Clark does have products. They are available at Staples and ready to go. And we've also included some compatibility with different chemicals. So you'll see a bunch of different active ingredients in this chart, and then how compatible our products are with them. So hydrogen peroxide being a very popular active ingredient in a lot of the chemicals that you're likely using to clean. And we can state that our X series white ball cloths are compatible. They're going to do the job. They're going to release that chemical like they're supposed to. And we're fortunate enough to have seen some wins in the healthcare environment with Staples that are using this right now. So they are actively doing this. It's been proven to be safe. It's an excellent alternative to that preset option. And then next being that spray and wipe. So also popular. If you're using that spray bottle, if you're using that disposable, the options even open up even more so from there. So we have different levels of the disposable cloths, different basis weights, that the heaviness of the actual cloth that's currently available and ready to go for all of those spray and wipe options that likely everybody's here is seeing or using or actively involved in their workplace.
All right, so thank you, Travis. Thank you, Fiona. With that pretty much wraps up what we were trying to cover, and I hope that there's a few things that you take away from today. It's number one, that people need to feel confident, and a lot of those cues are going to be visual, right? So they want to see you cleaning, and they want to make sure that you're using the right tools when you're doing that. It's all about cleaning for purpose and not just for show. The second, call it the Rolling Stones, call it what you want, but you can't always get what you want. But there are creative alternatives to consider for your new plan A. And that might be alternatives to hand sanitizer. It might be alternatives to pre-saturated wipers. And working with Staples, we can make sure that we can get you those. And then finally, this is probably the most critical one, is over communicating that demand plan with your distribution partner. So we work with Staples day in and day out to make sure we've got the right stuff in the right place at the right time. So if you know that your demand plan is changing based on different people being in different places and different times, let them know, and we can work with them to make sure we get the right supplies in the right place. So with that, I'd like to open it up to some Q&A. If you've got any questions, concerns about some of the things that we've covered today, or some of the other things that we might be able to help you out with.